Hi everyone, it's been a wee while since I last did an update on my YouTube channel, so I wanted to say hi to you all today and tell you how we've been getting on over the last several weeks. And really, it's been pretty slow out here in the garden. The weather this year has been terrible for getting flowers growing, unfortunately. So we've gone into May where we had very little sunshine. I think I could count 2 days where we actually had some sunshine. We could go outside in t-shirts. Got hopeful that that was going to be the start of things growing really well. And then we just went back to the same again, very cool temperatures, not really getting into the teens degrees Celsius at all really, just staying 7, 8, 9, 10 at most. No frost, but just cool weather the whole time, no sunshine and a lot of rain. It just seems to have rained all the time, and that has meant that we've had slugs and things, had wet, damp conditions, so they've been having a good nibble at things in the garden. And also we've had some gusty winds as well, so having support in for those young seedlings has been important, and sometimes I've missed that as well. Had some glorious lupins in May, which I was cutting for florists, really lovely, and then some really strong winds, and that took the rest of them down because I hadn't supported them enough. So learning things there was that need to get the support in early to make sure that they can withstand all the weather that's been thrown at them, the plants in the garden at the moment. Having said that, we've had some lovely flowers, managed to cut some nice florist buckets, and I'll show you in a minute what things were looking like in May. And just now we're in mid-June, and although everything just looks very static, it's really just not growing much at all due to the lack of sunshine. We have got a lot in the ground, so I'll show you what that's all looking like in a minute as well. And fingers crossed we get some sun going forward in the summertime so that we can get some of these lovely flowers that we know we can grow here in Scotland if we just get the right weather for us during the summer. So let's go and have a look just now and see what the garden's looking like. So behind me you can see the field that we're growing at the moment. This is meant to be a lovely lawn at the front of the garden, but for the last several months our sit-on lawnmower has been broken, awaiting this part that just doesn't come in, and we are just waiting for that, and fingers crossed we can get it soon so that we can get this bit of the garden back looking lovely and looking a little less like a field. So that has been a little bit of a challenge over the last few months. So Hattie's not really enjoying the long grass either, because every time we throw the ball for her it just disappears in the long grass and she can't find it anymore. The lawn aside, the garden is starting to come together. So we have got most things planted out in the garden now. The greenhouse is pretty empty, and here you can see my sunflowers, which really were slow to start. They didn't put on a lot of growth, but they are starting to take off now. We've got some support netting underneath in place that you can see to help them. And you can also probably see that there's quite a few nibbled sections on these. So when they were smaller, the slugs were really managing to have a good nibble. But having said that, I think they're getting tall enough now that they have survived most of the slug damage, and I think will grow away fine now. It's just those first initial leaves that have got some damage on them there. So hopefully we're going to get some good sunflowers in the next few weeks. We've got lots of Pro-Cut varieties in there. We've got Pro-Cut Orange, Pro-Cut Plum. We've also got some branching ones further down. So this is Valentine, which is a branching sunflower. Here we've got some corn cockles, which are not a million miles away from flowering now. I can start to see the flower heads just starting to come on them. So we've got some white ones and some rose ones there. Again, the Daucus isn't far away now. We're starting to get lots of heads on the Daucus that you can see here coming. These are all overwintered Daucus, so these are much stronger plants than my spring sown Daucus. Daucus is a really great filler. It's got really strong stems on it, does Daucus, so I really like it. So we've got lots of dahlias in planted. I need to come along and do some staking now because they are going to take off. I didn't have the time planting. I was trying to get them in the ground and I didn't stake at the time, which I should have done because I try and do it all at one time. But with work now as well, it's getting a little bit tricky to find the hours in the garden that I need. So that is a job to do in the next day or two. Dahlias are doing all right. They're putting on some growth, which is good, but they again have had slug damage. You can see here that there's quite a little bit nibbled away on this particular dahlia, but hopefully it'll come again. It is funny that some dahlias like the one you just saw have a lot of slug damage, and then other dahlias are untouched. This one's absolutely fine. So the dahlias have been pinched out, so you can see here, this is a good example. So that's the pinched out section here, and you can see that 2 new side shoots are coming from that one bit that I have cut off there. So hopefully that means that we're going to get bushier plants with more flowers later on. Again, this is another example where you can see that pinched out section there, and it's got 2 new, lots of growth coming on these 2 side stems here. So we're starting to get a few snaps that are flowering, which is great. These are overwintered ones. And the sapinaria, which you can see here, is supported with some support netting underneath, is just starting to think about flowering now. I really like sapinaria. It's really got lovely, delicate branching stems on it. A bit like Gypsophila covert garden that I grow, but a little bit stronger, I would say, and it's really easy to grow from seed. My Orlea this year has been really disappointing. Last year, absolutely fabulous, really long stems. This year, really poor, really short stems. I think maybe it is this lack of warmth and lack of sunshine. I have cut quite a bit. This is the last little bits in this particular patch, and actually all the greenery that you can see down below is me interplanting snaps to come away underneath when the Orlea is finished. But it really has short stems. It's not that usable in bouquets at all, just because it hasn't got the stem length. And I had a florist asking for some Orlea this week, and I just couldn't supply it for her because it just didn't have the length that she needed for wedding bouquets. So it has been disappointing. So we have had a little bit of Phacelia flowering, which has been really helpful for our jar arrangements, but like the Orlea, it's been really weak this year, not as strong as normal. Got lots of Nigella coming on, again quite a bit away from flowering though, because of the lack of warmth that we've had and the lack of sunshine. Got Hesperus just coming to an end now. It's done very well, so it is absolutely tolerant of cooler weather, wet weather. The Eryngium is just starting to come in the garden. It's just starting to come out, and it'll turn blue in the next few weeks. So I think what I'll do in a second is I'll just put a slide up showing you what my successes have been in this really cool, wet, windy early summer, and you can see some inspiration there maybe for your gardens next year if you're thinking, oh, things are just not growing well this year, what can I plant next year? And I'll also put up a few suggestions of things that haven't worked well for me this year, and we can have a think about how we can work on that for future seasons. So what have I been doing about the slugs this year? I don't know what it's been like for you, but the slugs have been particularly bad this year. I think because of this cool, damp, constant rain we've been having, the slugs have been out in force, and they certainly have been making their way through a lot of the little seedlings, particularly the dahlias and the sunflowers. They seem to be the worst hit. Some things like the statice don't seem to be affected too badly at all. So what have I been doing about the slugs? So I have been doing nightly slug patrols when I can remember, and this is fairly easy in the early springtime because of it gets dark quite early on in the evening, so you're not having to go out too late and do it, but it gets a little bit more difficult to do at this time of year when it's getting dark. More 10:30, 11 o'clock at night is the better time to go out and find them. But it's certainly very effective. You can pick up and dispose of a large number of slugs there, and that will help if you can get the population down early on in the season. I think that does help to control the amount of damage that happens to your plants. And things do get easier when things get taller. So you can see here all the slug damage on these sunflowers. It's the lower leaves that are the problem, that have been nibbled, and the new growth coming isn't quite so bad. Lots of people have lots of different ways of controlling the slugs in their garden. Another way that I've tried in the past is beer traps, where you can get a yogurt carton or something small like that. You can dig a hole in the soil, embed your yogurt pot into it so it's at the soil surface, and fill it with some beer, and the slugs are attracted to that. So that can work quite well as well. But let us know what ideas you've got for controlling the slugs in your garden, and have yours been particularly bad this year like mine have been? How have your plants managed to stand up to being nibbled by the slugs? So over here, the gladioli bulbs that were planted in the spring are coming up well, so they'll hopefully be nice colour later on towards the end of the season. So I've got lots of Sweet William planted up that I grew from seed last August, September time, and it's doing really well, but again, not putting on huge amounts of growth so far in the garden. I think it'll get away as soon as we get some warmer weather. I was so pleased with all my cosmos seedlings. I had so many healthy ones in the greenhouse growing. I thought we have to get them out in the garden, but they just have not put on any growth really since they've come out. I'm just hoping that they will provide some beautiful flowers later in the season, and that they do get away and start putting on growth. I mean, it is coming, but it's just terribly slow this year. So I've got lots and lots of snaps planted out in the garden, but again, like the cosmos, just haven't put on very much growth since they've gone outside. So hopefully we're going to get a little bit of warmth soon, and then they're going to get away. And again, I pinch these out to promote bushier plants with more flowers later on. So this is an example here, that's the pinched out section here, and we've got 2 new stems that are coming away from that. So we have 1 or 2 cornflowers coming out, but normally if I had overwintered cornflowers they would be well away by now, but not so much this year, but it's nice to see them starting to come now. And these are spring sown ones, and again they are just starting to come. You can see the buds on there. But I would have expected to have had a few weeks of these out already by now. So the flower beds in the back garden, although a little soggy, have been beautiful and full of different colours. So we've had the blue from the Jacob's Ladder, and we've got pinks and reds from the Astrantia, lime green from the Lady's Mantle, one thing I found is that Astrantia really does really well in the weather that we've been having. It's been absolutely fantastic this year. So it's been wet, which I think it likes. It has been fairly cool. It's not had too much sunshine. So fantastic. The lavender in the beds isn't far away from coming out either, so that'll be nice to see. Sweet peas are going away, but you can see here, this is bud drop, and this is due to the changes between daytime, nighttime temperatures. It's just been so wet and cool as well. But we can just cut them off and new ones will come away, and it'll be absolutely fine. We just need the weather to improve a little bit. More Astrantia up in this flower patch, and it really does just show that there's been an abundance of it this year. It's really like the weather. Cool, moist weather is good for Astrantia. Something else that'll be liking this damp weather is the still beet. So we're starting to get some flower heads coming through now. In a few weeks' time we should get some nice ones. They like damp conditions as well. So the perennial cornflowers have been nice again this year, and they don't seem to mind the weather. So we've had some great alliums again this year. This is Purple Sensation, and then we've got Purple Rain as well, and they've come out really beautifully no matter what the weather has thrown at them. They've got strong, sturdy stems. The Polemonium, or you might know it as Jacob's Ladder, has been really beautiful this year as well. The stems on this are nice and sturdy, and the little flower heads don't seem to be badly affected by the rain, especially if you can cut them when they're just starting to open, and then you can enjoy them in a vase. And you get this lovely white colour as well as the blues as well. The Aquilegia also did well in May. It's now finished flowering for the year. The darker ones seem to do a little bit better in the weather than the really pale pink varieties, so I think this one's Black Barlow. The lupins this year have done fantastically well. They bloomed and were absolutely glorious, and these are all ones that I had replanted because I had a lot of them that were cropping up from being self-seeded in my annual bed, so I wanted to move them into their own designated bed, and they flowered really well. I've managed to cut lots of them for buckets for florists, which has been fantastic. I didn't actually remember to take any pictures of the buckets though, but the one thing that's been a problem has been the wind, so they do need support, and I found some toppled without that support. So that's my lesson learned for next year, that you have to get support in early for the lupins, because they are heavy-headed, and the wind will just pull them over, and unfortunately that means you've then lost some really valuable stems of flowers for using. So even though the weather has been against us, we have had some really lovely flowers that I've been able to make up for jars for the stall and also to cut for florists. And what I've noticed is that even with cool, wet weather in May and into early June, the perennials are going to be the stars of the show. So I've had really good alliums, really good lupins, astrantia, and I've had one or two nice annuals and things. So I've got some orlea in here, but they've worked in this particular arrangement because it was a jar arrangement and the shorter stems suited that, but I haven't been able to use orlea in any bouquets or cut them for florists. Same with the ranunculus. I've had one or two nice blooms, but not a large number. So some things have definitely suited the weather, other things haven't. So here's a little reminder of some of the things that have grown and flowered well for me in mid-May to mid-June, despite having this really cool weather. It's not been frosty, but it has been very cool. We're still having to wear jumpers and jackets at this time of year. It's not t-shirt weather. It's been very wet, lots of persistent rain we've been having. Very, very little sunshine. I think that's been the main thing. It's just been grey, dull days. And we've had some gusty weather as well, some days where it's just been really quite wild. So one of the ones that's done really well has been astrantia. Highly recommend this. It comes back for me in my climate here in Scotland in zone 8B consistently every year. I can divide it in the spring to provide myself with more plants. Lots of different colours that it can come in, and it's just really versatile. You can use it in your flower arranging and it will last really well, and it's a cut flower, and also you can dry it for arrangements too. Other things that have done well this year have been Dutch iris. I didn't really replant any new ones this year. I just left old ones to come up, and you will get less every year coming back. I do need to plant some fresh ones next year, but actually the quality was good and they managed to survive well despite the weather. They've got strong, sturdy stems, so they were a good one to grow in this poor weather we've been having too. Ravenswing is a filler that I love that comes out in May, so it's finished now that we're in June, but it did come out. I would say it needed a bit of staking. It's quite tall and it's quite delicate, so a bit of staking will help that survive the wind in your garden, but a really nice, consistent one that'll come back year after year for you. You always do really well with Centaurea montana, the perennial cornflowers, so they came out really well for me. Again, though, a bit of support is good for them because they can get flattened by the wind really easily, so I'd recommend that. Lupins, again, fantastic, grew really well, bloomed really well for me, but I had needed to put support in and I didn't, and I'm going to remember that for next year. Get it in early because gusty winds will have them over in one day. Alliums, really good. They came out really nicely this year and they don't seem to be bothered by the wet, windy weather at all. Very consistent. Guillaumes as well, they flowered really nicely too and don't seem to have too much petal damage from the rain. Another strong one is Polemonium, and you wouldn't think that it was that strong from looking at it. Looks quite delicate, but actually the stems are really strong. They manage fine without staking in my garden and they don't seem to be affected by the weather. The Cheirophyllum hirsutum roseum, now that's a lovely pink filler and it comes out quite early in May for me, so it has finished now, but it is very striking, does well no matter what the weather, comes back consistently every year as a perennial. The Aquilegia's grown well as well. I would say the darker coloured ones definitely withstand the weather the best, but there's been some really nice blue and black Aquilegia that has really done well in the rain and the wind and been really good to use in arrangements. Hesperus, Sweet Rocket, it comes back every year. It's a good biennial, it sells seeds and it has nice strong stems. Again, a bit of staking is definitely worth it with this because it can get very tall and the wind can blow it over quite easily. And it has a lovely scent on it as well. Foxgloves have done really well this year. They don't seem to mind the rain or the wind either, so they've done very nicely. And Lady's Mantle as well. That doesn't bloom for me in May, so it's just coming now in June. But it is really striking, a really good filler. I love the lime green colour of it. And again, doesn't seem to be affected by the rain or the wind. So those were my recommendations for what has grown well for me in the garden this May and June. But what about things this year that have not grown so well? And a lot of these have been surprising. For the last couple of years, we've had really hot weather in mid-May to mid-June. So this year is completely different. We had a very wet summer last year following that spell in May and June. But May-June was the best of the sunshine, and it has been that way for the last few years. So to still be in our jumpers and our jackets at this time has been disappointing, and some of these flowers here haven't done so well because of that. So I would say my anemones and ranunculus have not been great this year. They do prefer to flower when it's slightly cooler. They don't like the real heat of the summer ranunculus, but even with that, the weather has been so poor that they just have not had enough sunshine or warmth to come on, and I've just had 1 or 2 flowers really from there, not a reliable supply. And then we've got other things that are like my corn cockles, my Arlea, my Gypsophila Covent Garden, cornflowers, Nigella, Phacelia, Amimantus and Salvia variedii. They all come under the same bracket of autumn sown hardy annuals that I would have grown in the autumn-September time, and I would expect them to be flowering by now. But they just aren't. I've got 1 or 2 and very thin stems, not tall. Usually they're really tall, strong plants with really good flowers on them, but not this year. And I can only think that that's because it's just been consistently cold and it's been consistently unsunny. The plants have just not been brought on at all. And that's been really disappointing because my autumn sown ones are normally my best producers. So now I'm relying more on those spring sown ones, and we're going to have to wait until the back end of the summer to see whether we're going to get some good flowers then. So looking back, if I had known that it was going to be like this for the whole of the last month, what could I have done differently? Well, I still think it was important to get these planted out in the garden because you couldn't still have them in the greenhouse. That has heated up in the daytime, and they need to be in the ground, they need to be in the soil and in that outside environment before they get pot bound. So I'm still pleased that I planted them out when I did, and it was late for me this year. I was planting them in early May, end of April as well. Quite often I would be getting them out end of March, beginning of April. But the weather was so poor then that I was holding off, and I eventually did get them in the ground, and they were all planted out by mid-May, but they just haven't grown very well. So I could have put low caterpillar tunnels over them. I didn't do that. That maybe would have protected them from the wind a bit. It might have given a little bit more heat, protected them a bit, and that might have brought them on. So I think if the weather looks next year like it might be similar again, I might do that. And I can always set the tunnels up, and if it does get much better weather than I'm thinking, then you can just pull the fleece back and not have it on the flowers. But if it is a cold, wet spell like we're having just now, I could keep it on. So I think that that's my learning point from this early summertime is I think low caterpillar tunnels may have helped the plants and bring them on more. Thanks so much for watching today, and even though we've got this grey sky there's not going to be rain far away again, and it's still cold and I'm wearing my winter jumpers and things. We just need a little bit of patience because we know the flowers will come. This is what happens in gardening, that some years it's slower than others, and I just need to be a little bit more patient, and then I'm sure July, August, September we're going to have some lovely flowers out there. So I'll check back in with you soon and I'll let you see how we're getting on. But please do let me know how things are going for yourselves as well. Maybe you haven't had all the rain and the cool weather. Maybe things are going a little bit better in your garden, or maybe things are a lot worse. Do let me know what is working well for you this year and what's not working so well.